Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy. And thanks for joining us today, October 25th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. Well, as always, we have a great number of things to celebrate today. We'll start off with the Abbot Orsini, who tells us that they celebrate Our Lady of Toledo in Spain, not Toledo in Ohio. This church was dedicated around the year 1075 by Bernard, the Archbishop of that city. Right? Moving on a little bit too, they celebrate Madonna di Canepanova in Pavia in Italy. So it's a very beautiful image that is, it's a fresco that's on the wall of the civic palace, as it would be, so like where the city government offices are, in Canepanova. Around 1492, so around when Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, our Lord willed to work many miracles by means of this image. So much so that the city decided to decree that they needed to build a church, right? The architect from Pavia, Amadeo, apparently has no last name, he's just well known, using Bramante's designs, almost brought the temple to its completion, right? So he died at some point, I suppose, which was then finally completed by other architects who are always from Pavia, from that region, which is very beautiful. In Tenerife, in the Canary Islands in Spain, in Buenavista del Norte, they celebrate Nuestra Señora de los Remedios, Our Lady of Remedies. In that town, they celebrate it because precisely today, in 1659, the town was saved from locusts. Also today, they celebrate the Mother of God of Palermos in Centine in Montenegro. Okay? So what is the story of this image? Well, believed to have come from Jerusalem, where St. Luke painted it from life. Massive, what a great doctor and a great painter. The icon of Our Lady of Palermos was already enshrined on Mount Palermos on the Greek island of Rhodes when the Knights Hospitallers took over the island in 1309, right? This order adopted Our Lady of Palermos as their patroness and took the image with them when the Turks drove them out of Rhodes in 1522. For many years, the Knights and the icon resided in Malta. After Napoleon conquered Malta in 1798, the Knights dispersed. The Palermos icon moved to Russia, where on October 12th, in the Julian calendar, 1799, it was presented to the Emperor Paul I, now Grand Master, at his residence in Gatchina, 30 miles from St. Petersburg. Right? From then on, Russian Orthodoxy has honored the Mother of God of Palermos on this date, which is October 25th in the modern calendar. Right? The icon survived the Russian Revolution in 1917 because it had moved from the royal palace in St. Petersburg back to Gatchina for the occasion. Right? In 1920, Empress Maria Feodorovna took it with her when she fled to Denmark. After her death, the Orthodox clergy moved the sacred image to Belgrade and then in 1941 to a Montenegrin monastery to hide it from the Nazis. In fact, it was hid so well that people believed it was lost until it was rediscovered there in Montenegro in 1997, even with most of its jewels surprisingly intact. We're told now that this particular icon has a place of honor in the National Museum of Montenegro, where it hangs in the Blue Chapel. So that is what we are celebrating today in the Marian world on October 25th. For today's reading from True Devotion to Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, we continue with part 2 on the most excellent devotion to Our Blessed Lady, or the perfect consecration to Jesus through Mary. And again, we're reading section 1 in what consists the perfect consecration to Mary to Jesus Christ through Mary. And we'll read just the concluding points for this section of this section, literally, because then we start the next section on motives for perfect consecration. So here he's going to answer some objections. Point 132. But some may object that this devotion, in making us give to our Lord by Our Lady's hands the value of all our good works, prayers, mortifications, and alms, puts us into a state of incapacity for helping the souls of our parents, friends, and benefactors. I answer them as follows. First, that it is not credible that our parents, friends, and benefactors should suffer any damage from the fact of our being devoted and consecrated without exception to the service of our Lord and His Holy Mother. To think this would be to think unworthily of the goodness and power of Jesus and Mary, who know well how to assist our parents, friends, and benefactors out of our own little spiritual revenue, or by other ways. And 2, this practice does not hinder us in praying for others, whether dead or living, although the application of our good works depends on the will of our Blessed Mother. On the contrary, it is this very thing that will lead us to pray with more confidence. Just as a rich person, who has given all his wealth to his prince, in order to honor him the more, would beg the prince all the more confidently to give an alms to one of his friends who should demand it. It would even be a source of pleasure to the prince to be given an occasion of proving his gratitude toward the person who had stripped himself to clothe him and impoverished himself to honor him. We must say the same of our Blessed Lord and of Our Lady. They will never let themselves be outdone in generosity. Point 133. Someone may perhaps say, if I give to Our Blessed Lady all the value of my actions to apply to whom she wills, I may have to suffer a long time in purgatory. Now, this objection, which comes from self-love and ignorance of the generosity of God and His Holy Mother, refutes itself. A fervent and generous soul who gives God all that he has, without reserve, so that he can do nothing more, the one who lives only for the glory and reign of Jesus Christ through His Holy Mother, and who makes an entire sacrifice of himself to bring it about, will this generous and liberal soul, I say, be more punished in the other world because it has been more liberal and more disinterested than others? Far indeed will that be from the truth. Rather, it is toward that soul that our Lord and His Holy Mother are the most liberal in this world and in the other, in the orders of nature, grace, and glory. And then to finish this section, we can read point 134. But we must now, as briefly as we can, run over the motives which ought to recommend this devotion to us, the marvelous effects it produces in the souls of the faithful, and its practices.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed our Marian podcast. As St. John Paul II teaches us, from Mary we learn to love Christ, her Son, the Son of God. Through her intercession, may we grow ever closer to Him. We encourage you to share this with a loved one or friend and help spread our devotion to Mary. Thank you, and God bless.